The Zephyrian High Command had prepared for this moment for 3 rotations. Their invasion fleet, comprising 200 vessels of varying classes, hung in the void just beyond the third planet's detection range. Admiral Vexthul studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The primitive species below had barely managed to escape their own gravity well, constructing crude orbital stations and launching laughably slow chemical rockets. "Intelligence reports confirm, Admiral," reported his aide, Commander Nixtar. "The humans possess no energy shields, no plasma weaponry, and their fastest vessels require rotations to traverse their own system. They are decades behind even our most conservative estimates of minimum spacefaring capability." Vexthul's mandibles clicked in amusement. "And yet the Council insisted we bring our entire third fleet, overly cautious as always." He gestured toward the blue-green world. "Begin the demonstration. One city should suffice to encourage surrender." The dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath powered its primary plasma cannon, targeting the human settlement designated New York. The weapon that had reduced mountains to glass on 17 worlds began its charging sequence. That's when everything went wrong. The humans, impossibly, detected the charging weapon from 0.3 light-minutes away. Within seconds, their orbital stations began broadcasting on every frequency imaginable, not surrender please, but coordination signals. Their primitive chemical rockets, previously dismissed as harmless, suddenly revealed hidden capabilities. Captain Sarah Chen watched the alien vessel's energy signature spike from the bridge of the hastily retrofitted cargo hauler Determination. The past 72 hours had been the most intense of humanity's existence since the first radio signals had been detected from the incoming fleet. "Ma'am, that's definitely a charging sequence," reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "Whatever they're pointing at Earth, it's big enough to crack continents." Sarah nodded grimly. 3 days ago, she'd been running supply missions to Luna Base. Now she was commanding one of 200 hastily armed civilian vessels in humanity's first space battle. The cargo bay behind her had been stripped out and replaced with every nuclear warhead the Emergency Council could requisition. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Execute Crazy Ivan." The Zephyrian admiral watched in growing confusion as the human vessels suddenly accelerated beyond their supposed maximum velocity. Impossible. Their intelligence clearly indicated these ships were limited to chemical propulsion. "Sir," Nixtar reported, his voice tight with concern, "they're using their fusion reactors as direct thrust sources. They've essentially turned their power plants into drives." "Impossible," Vexthul chittered. "The radiation exposure alone would kill the crews in moments." "Admiral," the tactical officer interrupted. "Incoming missiles, primitive nuclear weapons, but—" "Sir, there are thousands of them." The human strategy became terrifyingly clear. Unable to match Zephyrian technology, they had simply ignored every safety protocol their species had ever developed. Ships that should have been limited to gentle orbital maneuvers were burning their reactor cores at lethal intensity, achieving accelerations that would liquefy most beings. The radiation flooding their hulls would have been fatal to Zephyrians within minutes. But humans, the Admiral realized with growing horror, were significantly more radiation-resistant than their intelligence had indicated. Sarah felt her teeth ache as another wave of gamma rays washed through the Determination's inadequate shielding. Her crew was taking enough radiation to guarantee cancer within the year, assuming they survived the next hour. But that was a problem for tomorrow's humanity. "Warheads away," Torres reported. "First wave impact in 43 seconds. The nuclear weapons were primitive by galactic standards, but the humans had compensated for technological inferiority with sheer volume and tactical brutality. Each ship carried enough firepower to sterilize a small moon, and they were delivering it all at once. But the real shock came when the first human vessels reached ramming distance. "Admiral!" The communications officer's voice cracked with panic. "The lead human vessel is broadcasting on all frequencies." The translation came through moments later in what would become known as the most terrifying battle cry in galactic history. "See you in hell, you alien bastards!" The determination struck the Sovereign's wrath at 17% of light speed. Sarah Chen had the distinction of becoming the first human to die in interstellar combat and the first to take an alien dreadnought with her. The fusion reactor's containment failure created a brief new star, visible from Earth with the naked eye. Across the battle space, similar scenes played out. Humans rammed trillion-credit warships with retrofitted garbage haulers. They detonated nuclear weapons at point-blank range, sacrificing themselves to damage alien vessels. When their primitive missiles were intercepted, they flew the ships themselves into enemy hulls. Admiral Vexthul watched his mighty Third Fleet dissolve into scrap metal and radiation. These humans fought like madmen, like creatures with nothing to lose and everything to prove. They turned their civilian infrastructure into weapons, their safety equipment into ammunition, their own bodies into guided missiles. "Admiral," Nixtar reported quietly, "we're down to 37 functional vessels. The humans, sir, even their damaged ships are trying to ram us." The Admiral stared at the tactical display in numb shock. How had the Council's intelligence been so catastrophically wrong? These weren't the primitive creatures they'd expected to subjugate. These were apex predators who treated extinction-level threats as engineering problems to be solved through creative violence. "Signal retreat," he whispered. "Full retreat, and send a priority message to the Council. Reclassify human space as forbidden territory. Recommend we never return." As the surviving Zephyrian vessels fled toward the edge of the system, they left behind the wreckage of the most one-sided defeat in their military history. The humans had lost nearly their entire improvised fleet, but they had achieved something unprecedented. They had made the galaxy's third-largest military power simply run away. On Earth, the survivors began planning for the aliens' inevitable return, unaware that there would never be one. They had no way of knowing that their desperate, suicidal defense had become a legend whispered in fear across 1,000 worlds. The first contact had indeed gone wrong, just not for the species anyone expected.